secrets or a masterclass. Those are like such worn out hooks, and people think that they're an answer, but really what we're creating is this new piece of messaging. I didn't talk about the offer. I didn't talk about the origin story. There's no sales message. It's a different kind of messaging.
Steve Larsen, an offer creation expert and sales funnel strategist.
After working with Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels, Steve started his own company to carve his own trail and crossed $11 million in 4 years, which is all documented in his podcast, Sales Funnel Radio.
With your top performing campaigns, what's the mix typically look like between organic content, paid ads?
The only marketing method that we see big boy corporate world do that we also do.
The Content Capitalist Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Content Capitalist Podcast. I've got a special guest with me today. And the reason why I invited him is because I've been following and tracking what he's been doing online for so many years, yet haven't had an opportunity to actually sit down with him one-on-one. And this is how I do it. I say, hey, get on my podcast. And this is how we explore and figure out and learn from each other. Steve Larsen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
I appreciate it. Steve, by the way, the podcast is going to be mostly business owners, people learning about content creation, especially when it comes to marketing. And I think most of them have heard of you, and your name's been around in this space for quite a bit. But in case somebody hasn't, could you give us a real quick overview? What do you do and what kind of people do you help?
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely is funny to have to do podcasts in order to get to know each other more, right? We'll have to chat more after this. But no, I build marketing machines for business owners. So I started out building funnels for Russell Brunson. And it's been 7 years since I left that job. And now that's still what I do. I help build marketing machines for internet people.
That's perfect. I think that sums it up pretty well. Steve, right now, there's probably more people who are, quote unquote marketers than any other time in the world. I think that there's this perception that it's a really low barrier to entry. You can take a course, you spend, a couple $100 a month, you have all the software you need, and then you can start selling, right? What do you think sets people apart like you, who charges an amount that some people would freak out about, and then the entry level people who are trying to get there? Like what does it mean to pay someone like you versus anybody else to help them get their marketing machines built?
Yeah, it's interesting because marketing is one of those things like you go through, just like any skill set. I feel like you go through that immersion phase for a while. And then once you've been through the immersion phase, it's time to stop learning, meaning through books anyway. At least put the courses down, put the books down, and actually just learn by application. And marketing's so different. And I think where people get stuck is they keep thinking that it's kind of like, I think of it like the stock market, where like if you see a stock on TV of someone like, this is the hottest stock ever, it's already too late. You know what I mean? Like someone has taken the trick. Same thing with marketing. Someone takes the trick and says, this is the hottest marketing thing ever. By the time everyone goes and hears it and sells it, it's like it's already been used by some of the inner circles for a long time. And so for me, I think the biggest difference between someone who's new and experienced is their understanding of human psychology and copy. That's really it, and all the tricks and tactics, those will always keep new ones pop up all over the place. But at the end of the day, it's really a copy game, I think the noobs get too tech focused, whereas the people that are, been around for a while understand that, honestly, the tech doesn't really matter, It's like I would like to say a true musician can make an out of tune piano still sound good, After a while, the brand of a thing doesn't really matter. There's just, are you actually good at marketing or not, So, yeah.
I love that perspective. That makes a lot of sense. I think that you're totally right about that. I can't find any argument against that. It's just being able to synthesize with whatever material is thrown at you, and then take your experience, your knowledge of human psychology, adapt it to that, and launch, right?
Yeah.
I saw a post you made just recently where you took a photo of a notebook where you had notes upon notes upon notes of marketing lessons. And you're saying this is pure gold, but that's something that you took years and years ago. When you look back at that, was there anything that surprised you about the kind of stuff you're learning then versus what's happening now?
Yeah, funny, and I was talking to Russell about this like last week on how funny it is that it's almost, you kind of have to relearn things from new angles. Like I've been building funnels for 10 years now, and I can't believe it's been 10 years, but things that I learned 10 years ago just go back to the basics. You relearning the foundations from a new lens every time. And I think that's actually a good thing. It's a message of hope, because if someone's like, oh man, I got to learn more and more and more and more, it's like once you get the foundations down, you just keep relearning them in new situations. And so picking up that book, I was like, holy smokes, this is talking about, being an attractive character. This is the first time I ever heard of that. And now, I have a lot to say on the topic, but it's just remastering the fundamentals. I think marketers tend to get really very easy to get sucked into the shiny object syndrome, or like some brand new flash in the pan technique, and you're like, it doesn't really matter. Can you do the fundamentals?
Yeah, so true. And does the same thing happen when you sometimes pick up an old book from somebody who's been long dead and you're just like, wow, this is marketing gold?
Yeah, I think so. You ever read the book Perennial Seller by Ryan Holiday? And he talks about that, on how hard it is to write something that is going to last for a decade, much less a few years, and be something that's always passed around. And I think that's one of the beauties of going back to old notes or things that you did when you were first learning the craft, is you're like, oh, I forgot this. And I think it's a beauty of this whole thing.
I just recently finished going through Carl Jung's work, the psychologist from the early 1900s, late 1800s. And the stuff I'm reading in there is so fundamental to what everybody in marketing is building everything around. The need for a God figure, the need for the community, all these human basic emotional things that drive us and let us create what he calls myths, that which in his terminology is every religious kind of section in the world, that help us to organize our actions and thoughts and desires. And I was like, this is so meta. And I think that was the OG of what people base their marketing strategies on, is his stuff, way from early 1900s. Brilliant stuff.
It really is interesting. My marketing, what I will say has changed, although I've returned to the fundamentals, is my definition of marketing has changed significantly. I mean, in the past, 10 years ago, I thought that building a funnel was marketing, but there's no marketing in a funnel. We call it a sales funnel for a reason. It's not a marketing funnel, and because they're totally different. And so I always thought that marketing was just like this, honestly, a piece of tech. And then after a while, I remember I was like, oh, marketing is just making noise, but I could stand on the street and shout. That's not marketing. So now what's really changed is my definition of marketing being that, to me, marketing is nothing more than attention getting measured in lead gen. That's it. Can't measure it in likes, comments, subscribe, shares, and those are all cool metrics and stuff. But like, honestly, at the end of the day, if you've got a sales team, they're always asking for more leads, so they look to the marketing team. It's like, really, that's the only way to measure marketing. And I think it's actually a freeing definition, because it cuts out a lot of the possible routes we could like rabbit hole down that really, like anytime you put a podcast out, or anytime I put, like, if no leads come from it, was it actually marketing? It's like, no, there's just content. And some don't agree with me on that definition, but now I think it actually makes it easier to win. Like, oh, lead gen, that's really it.
Do you think that a lot of people are confusing these two hats, sales and marketing, especially when they're hiring an agency, potentially like yourself?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, or they'll think it's the same. I mean, I thought it was the same thing for a while. Thinking back to when I was a door-to-door sales guy, there was two parts to the script, right? Like, half of the script was just getting somebody to get engaged with you, so that we could do the second part of the script. And I was a door-to-door sales guy for 2 summers. I did telemarketing for a while, because I knew I sucked at sales, so I wanted to get good. And so I did that in college, just trying to get better. And I remember all 3 times I was a direct sales guy, we were never allowed to go to part 2 of the script without getting them to ask this one question. And this one question was basically getting them to emotionally raise their hand and say, tell me more. How much is it? One of those two. And then we were allowed to do the other part. And funny enough, it's no different on the internet. I look at marketing as everything you're doing before they finally say, tell me more. How much is it? Because now they're engaged, now they're a lead. And we don't really get to choose when someone becomes a lead. I think that it's really only a decision emotionally they're making when they go, tell me more. and they raise their own hand. I think where we get in trouble on the internet and all these new marketers don't understand is they're like, all noise is good. It's like, well, sometimes it's annoying, and they're like walking around the internet, raising their people's hands, going, "You're a lead, right?" Trying to raise people's hands for them. Get your hand up there. You want to hear about my offer, right?
That
And that's where it
reminds
gets
me of
annoying.
these mega events where these speakers they don't make money unless they sell, and they're just like everybody stand up, everybody put your hand up. And I used to run huge events here in Japan, like 2 to 8,000 people every month at my live events, and I'd bring people in, but then I don't do that anymore. But what I'm seeing on the marketing front is a lot of people learn their marketing and sales from that experience, and it doesn't transfer well to online because there's the rudeness factor, right? You're in the front of a room, there's a few thousand people, and if the moment you get bored, if you're going to stand up, pick up your books and your jacket and do a shame walk across the front and all the way to the back, everybody's staring at you, like people aren't going to do that. Whereas online, it's a quarter of a flick of an inch, right? And you're gone, and everything's got to adapt. They're two totally different games, and that's just a lot of bad habits carried over, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it's just this really tender balance between understanding where marketing actually does end and sales begins, because there's this handoff. And I think it's that question, how much is it? Or it's whatever, however they finally engage and say, tell me more. And a lot of marketers are actually spreading sales material, not marketing material. And that's why it's so offensive, I think, and annoying.
How do you transfer getting that signal from your lead to, let's say, organic or paid marketing? Because when you said that, I love that, how there's you look for that marker, the tell me more. How do I, how much is it, right? And that would work well in a chat or phone conversation. How do you take that to like something automated or organic content?
Like a funnel or something like that.
Exactly.
I just think of the literal definition of it, like sales funnel. Well, if let's say page one of my sales funnel is the first step in trying to get them to really hand off from marketing to sales, and at the middle there is really page one of the funnel, then I can kind of assume that everything pre page one of the funnel is marketing, spreading just enough information, telling the customer's story, not yours. They don't care about you yet. All these different new angles to be able to go create market messaging so that someone goes, wait, tell me about that. Let me opt in. Wait, tell me about that. Let me start moving on your free pro shipping or whatever that is, or book a call with you. Because then they're engaged. And I think that's the trend of what's happening. I know we were talking about this a second, but I think it's the trend of what's going on right now is you got a bunch of marketers who are actually salespeople thinking they're marketing with some really powerful tech. And so they're just shotgunning all this sales material thinking that they're being marketers, but they're really just, it's the equivalent of people just coming to your front door all the time with a credit card form. Want to buy? Want to buy? Want to buy? Like, man, I didn't ask you to show up. I'm not engaged in this yet, And the shift was right at 2020 when AI came out, and now all this bland marketing could be created at volume. And then remember, the world was also like, you can make money on the internet. Like all these people came and flooded on, and so there's more competition. And all these companies all these companies never had to figure out their messaging before are being forced to figure out their messaging. And I think that's why leads are struggling right now.
I think another thing that happens that I've observed is that when the new tech comes in and then you start shotgunning the market, there may have already been some low-hanging fruit from years ago of people knowing you. And the initial boost in sales gives people the illusion that this is working. But then there's a heavy, heavy cliff after that. And they can't figure out why it's not. And then they go on the cycle again of, let's try something new. Let's try something new. And then round and round we go again, right?
You're selling the same pocket of people, just new things 24/7.
Could you explain to me what is the typical path people take from never hearing of you, Stephen, to becoming a client in terms of, why don't you just, if you could break that down for me, I'd really appreciate that so that the audience and myself can understand how, someone like you does it.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my marketing, when I got a marketing degree, in college, and they were really for this whole red ocean, blue ocean thing. And I even heard about it then. And I'm not knocking it, but the thing that I ran into is that when I left working at ClickFunnels, I didn't want to compete with You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to be another funnel guy, even though I was the funnel guy's funnel guy, you know? And so I was trying to figure out how I could be complementary instead of competitive. And what that really did is it made me discover some new forms of market positioning. And so red ocean, blue ocean, for anyone who doesn't know what that is here, I'm sure you guys all do, right? You're creating a new market simply because you created a new offer. But about 7 years ago, I started asking, is there a way for me to not make a new offer or market simply because I made something new and unique? And it shifted to red ocean, blue offer, where you stay in the red because there's already people there. And you learn how to interact with the red ocean and treat the competition as a blessing. And it's actually an accelerant. So my favorite thing to do is to find these massive, it's the exact opposite of what college taught me, which is like, oh, you can't go into that. It's really competitive. And now I want that. And I'm looking for something that is insanely big, red, been around for decades, this massive market where there's these razor thin margins. And those are the, frankly, easier markets to go get leads from because there's already people there. And with the blue ocean thing, I kind of think of it as like, it's like you choose to go build a mall just so you have a kiosk to set up. It's like you just go to the other malls that are already there, go where the traffic is, and it makes leads a lot easier. So there's a lot that goes into that strategy, but it means you don't have to be a category king. You don't have to have built a market to step into the middle of lead flow. It's like stepping into a huge river instead of choosing to dig one. And you get beat up a little bit, but it's easier because there's already traffic. It's a lot more forgiving. So that's really how I do it. I'll go choose these massive markets, and then I figure out this market believes that funnels are the thing, right? And here are the key players that are all talking about it. And I think of them as these channels, these distribution channels that are reaching into a physical circle, And I'm like, okay, I could go disrupt this market for leads by saying the opposite and then dropping it in the middle. That'll cause a ripple. Or I could align with the beliefs that are in there. And that's it's one of my core methods. So then I just cannon content into that market.
That works. Uh, I see you do a blend of like online stuff, obviously, and then you have your live audience. I've seen photos of that, and you probably also have like virtual Zoom type of coaching or consulting. Could you kind of give us a kind of what's the lay of the land and what you're offering?
Yeah. You do events, right? I mean, sounds like obviously as well.
I used to. I don't do live events anymore.
Yeah. I mean, they're a little different now.
I get the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went and before 2020, I had done so many events that I realized that it was going to be part of a core part of my business moving forward. And I had dropped $1 million just doing events. I mean, holy smokes, they're so expensive, but they're amazing. And the reason why I kept doing them is because, honestly, because of Russell and ClickFunnels. After I saw how fast you can capture market share with a live event, I was like, I got to keep doing this when I leave. I mean, it's like the only marketing method that we see like big boy corporate world do that we also do. You're probably not going to see Apple do like a 5-day challenge, coming to a 5-day challenge, Apple. But they do events, and it's like they're that one marketing campaign. So I realized that, and just helping plan and be a part of a lot of those things or whatever, there's like events are cool because they kind of transport someone's brain from the present to the future and they get to live in it and then come back. It's, so for me, I like to use my a little event studio for hybrid people who are still value the in-person connection. There's that option for them, but then we still stream virtually. And I found that that's been a fun thing. And the recording is cleaner because it's more engaging. There's the people who are watching the recording can see other people's heads. It's more involved than just talking to an empty camera.
Yeah, for sure. We're running out of time, but I got like two last questions for you. Okay. With your top performing, campaigns, either for yourself or for your clients, what's the mix typically look like between organic content, paid ads, and anything else you might be putting into the mix?
Yeah, I definitely don't like to rely on just one. I've learned that lesson before. So now, like one of the funnels that I just put out, I'll write a hook for it, which is baked in emotion and just it's really bathed in the customer story. And again, I don't really talk about the offer. all it's meant to do is to get someone to go, tell me more, when they opt in, and now they're in it. But I'll take that same story. For example, there's a client, just as an actual example, there's a client that I'm working with right now. He helps women with osteoporosis. And we wrote this story out that was like, hey, you just got off the phone with the doctor, and the doctor's telling you need to go back in to look at your latest bone density scan results because it's not looking good. But how did you get here? You've been taking medications for 2 years now. And funny enough, you actually were the one that all of your friends looked up to as an example of what good health actually looks like. So why are you the one stuck with weak bones? As you get to the doctor's office, they tell you, there's a point to this, they tell you that good thing you at least followed the protocol, your bones would be weaker if you didn't. As you walk back out to your car, you suddenly have this striking fear of realizing that you have actually a chance of ending up in permanent assisted living the rest of your life. While you slowly let these medications poison your bones to death. What could you do in the next, 12 months that's unorthodox to change your habits? And then we got, bonepoison.com. And
ooh,
right?
Good one.
That's what I
can
mean
feel
about
it already. I can feel it inside my bones right now. You just injected a red pill inside of me.
It's interesting because that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about now. And I think that all these people are trying to say secrets or masterclass, or those are such worn out hooks, and people think that they're an answer, but really what we're creating is this new piece of messaging pre-page 1 of the funnel. And I'll take that story, that little story I just said. I didn't talk about the offer. I didn't talk about the origin story. There's no sales message. It's a different kind of messaging. But now from that, I'll go that one story I can tell on an ad. I can tell it on YouTube. I can go interview people in that situation. But I also know that while it's a magnet, it's also a filter. No woman who's not been taking medications for 2 years is going to proceed after doing that. So it's been this cool thing where it's this piece of messaging getting people to say, tell me more, while also filtering and upgrading, qualifying them before they actually enter the funnel. That's really how I do it. So it's a combo of organic, paid, and then DMs. That's my favorite right now.
I appreciate you breaking that down. Here's the last one. I know you've got a subscription model for people who want to dip their toes, want to keep in touch with you, see what's going on. Could you break down what that is and let people know how they can get a hold of that info if they want to follow you or subscribe to your stuff?
Oh, it's nice of you. Yeah. I call it Attentioneer. And it's based off of Walt Disney. He called his guys, his engineers, Imagineers, and how much more meaning that added. Really, marketers are engineers of attention. And so I call it an Attentioneer. And what it is it's just very low ticket subscription where you get access to most of my previous stuff, walk someone through how to launch, how to build an offer, how to build a funnel, how to manage the project. I've been in the game for a while, so there's a lot of stuff in there. So we had to delete a bunch, but clean it up a little bit. But anyway, it's super fun. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
All right. Well, if you're listening on the podcast, go to the show notes, guys. There'll be a link to that. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the description. Other than that, Steve, do you have any last words of wisdom for somebody who's cutting their teeth with marketing? Maybe they're spinning their wheels, feel like they're going nowhere. What should they be focusing on?
Yeah, great question, really. I look at this game as a term in terms of phases. And the first phase you're trying to solve is the entrepreneur phase. But as soon as you have an offer, take off that hat. It's not an identity, it's a phase. And people get kind of a fetish about it, right? I'm an entrepreneur. It's take it off, then put on the marketer hat, because that's where the money comes, and really lean into that. Don't obsess too much over the tech, make sure it works, but really, can you get attention is where the money that's where it comes. It's not so much offer focus.
All right, guys, you heard it. I appreciate you, Steve. We're about to hang up, but for everybody else, I'll see you next week. And Steve, thank you so much for sharing.
Hey, thanks so much, Ken. This was awesome.
No hustle worship here, we're a different breed. Action is what we got if action is what you need. Content capitalists, we're breaking the mold. Cause the old ways fading, new stories to be told. So content capitalists, get to the prize.